Welcome back to Banjo Strings and Drinking Gourds, the podcast of the Frontier Culture Museum of Virginia. I'm Rachel, your host for today, and today's topic is malaria, its historical thought and treatment. Joining us today will be our resident medical historian, Michaela.
Hello, everyone.
So, Michaela, how long have you worked at the FCM?
I have worked at the Frontier Culture Museum for 4 years now, but typically I like to count in summers because seasons truly matter here at the museum, so about 5 summers.
And what sites do you normally work on?
I began working on the 1850s farm due to previous interest in antebellum and Civil War. But since then, I've added Ireland, First Peoples of Appalachia or Eastern Woodland Indian Site, 1760s Valley of Virginia, Africa, and 1820s America to the farms I work on. Most of the time, though, you will catch me on the New World side.
So how did you become interested in medical history? It's not something that typically gets talked about.
So I became interested in medical history long before coming to the museum. My great-grandfather was an herbalist and a guide for the state park in Swallow Falls, Maryland. His notes and books came into my possession when I was a young child. I pored over them, fascinated by the detailed images of herbs and its properties. My mother became interested because I was interested, and she later became a certified clinical herbalist. So I guess you could say that the interest runs in the family. Of course, I've always had a fascination, too, with the macabre.
Which is very important when you talk about medical history. How do you apply medical history to the museum?
While researching medical history, I have discovered that medicine gets to the core of who we are as human beings. Getting sick is an intimate aspect of our lives. By studying their ins and outs of treating the sick, we get an exclusive inside look into their daily personal lives. You also get to see how a psyche can be shaped by medical events. For example, a person living during the Black Death in Europe with no concept of germs would have had a completely different outlook on life than someone living in 1940s America with a smallpox vaccination. Medical advances can shape history, sometimes for the worst, sometimes for the better. Abraham Vance stated in his book, The New York Times Book of Medicine, "What we seem most sure of today will in 50 years be viewed as primitive and absurd. An attitude of humility is therefore prudent. But perhaps one has to be humbled first to arrive at this stance."
So, I've heard you mention folk medicine before. Can you define that? What does it mean beyond using plants?
According to dictionary.com that I so handy-dandy Googled, folk medicine is the treatment of disease or injury based on tradition, especially oral tradition, rather than a modern scientific practice and often utilizing indigenous plants as remedies. So what does that mean? Since the birth of humans on Earth, human beings have been getting sick. We have also been caring about others getting sick because, let's be honest, we could just not care. Therefore, we have always been finding treatments to cure our loved ones. Prior to basic understandings of scientific approaches, we relied on what we had on hand, nature and faith. So, where a plant couldn't fix the problem, then it became a matter of your spirit, and vice versa.
So, why the interest in malaria?
So, malaria is one of the oldest known diseases plaguing the human race. Some scholars suggest that malaria may have been one of the longest and largest plagues in total human history. Malaria has landed on almost every continent in the world. It was present at the fall of Rome, the European Renaissance, and even the beginning of colonial America. By contrast with pandemics, outbreaks of a disease that is prevalent around the world or a country, malaria is an ongoing endemic, a regularly found disease or condition in a particular place or certain people.
So, why is an endemic like malaria so relevant or important to understand today?
So, according to the CDC, or the Centers for Disease Control, about 2,000 cases of malaria are diagnosed in the United States alone every year. In 2018, over 228 million were affected by malaria in the world. Malaria stalks locations like Africa, Southeast and Central Asia, Central America, and South America. While we have had treatments for malaria for centuries, malaria is an immunosuppressive disease, meaning that any victim of malaria will become more susceptible to other diseases. It especially preys on pregnant women and younger children who have not built up an immune system against the disease. Malaria is especially dangerous to those in poor housing conditions and or the inability to obtain mosquito nets, sprays, or prophylactics. Malaria imposes on personal, direct, government costs, travel, foreign affairs, and even the arts. Malaria continues to affect our world and the systems that hold it together.
So, what is malaria? Or what is the disease itself?
So, malaria is a mosquito-borne disease. However, mosquitoes are not necessarily the cause of the disease, much like the flea and the rat situation with the bubonic plague.
Then how actually is it transmitted?
So, I'm going to get really sciencey and probably mispronounce a lot of names, so just bear with me. I apologize to the history folk out there and possibly the science folk out there. So, most commonly, the female mosquito or the Anopheles carries a parasite, typically a single-celled microorganism of the Plasmodium group. The female mosquito bites the human, therefore carrying the parasite into the bloodstream.
And how is that different from yellow fever?
So, yellow fever is also transmitted by mosquitoes. However, yellow fever occurs with the Aedes or the Haemogogus species. Other mosquito-borne diseases including Zika, West Nile virus, and the dengue fever. As the Dalai Lama said in 1977, if you ever thought that one man was too small to make a difference, try being shut up in a room with a mosquito.
So really, we actually have a lot to fear from mosquitoes, not the least being annoyance. But what are the actual effects of malaria?
So once the transmission has occurred, the human will begin to have some of these symptoms: fever, chills, headache, muscle aches, fatigue. Other symptoms can include nausea, vomiting, anemia, jaundice, and diarrhea. Blech. Severe cases can result in kidney failure, seizures, coma, and death. Malaria is a vicious disease. It can lie dormant in a body for years and return with a vengeance. Fiametta Rocco writes in her book, Quinine Malaria and the Quest for a Cure That Changed the World, there is something particularly insidious about the way malaria stalks its victims, the way its parasites lurk within the body, hiding from its immune system and lying silent for years until you think you have finally shaken it off, only to find that it always returns, driving you mad with fever, shivering, delirium, and pain, weakening you more with every bout before. Often, it eventually kills you.
So what was the historical thought regarding malaria?
You do have to be careful about the terminology malaria, especially when researching historical documents. So, for example, malaria was an umbrella term for group symptoms like fever and chills and nausea. So, if you're referring to malaria, they may actually be referring to influenza or pneumonia. Malaria also went by other names such as the Roman fever or the tertian fever. For example, Chaucer writes in the Canterbury Tales, "You are so very choleric of complexion. Beware the mounting sun and all dejection, nor get yourself a sudden humours hot, for if you do, I dare well lay a grout, that you shall have the tertian fever's pain, or some ague that may well be your bane." But the term malaria simply means bad air in medieval Italian. The disease was originally believed to have been caused by breathing in miasmas or bad air. Oftentimes people wore sachets of herbs or stayed in sewers to cancel out the bad air. The book, The Origin of Disease, edited in 610 AD, featured 50 volumes of Chinese medicines. The book mentions miasmas. However, the author believed miasmas to be different from malaria or dysentery. I can I suppose you could say it's a step in the right direction. Our full understanding of malaria as a mosquito-borne disease was not unraveled until 1880 with Alphonse Laveran and Sir Ronald Ross. So before that, it was all speculation or pure ignorance of transmission. However, despite our misunderstanding, malaria is a rare incident in the medical world in which we found the treatment before we officially found the cause. To quote Sir William Osler, malaria treatment. This comprised in 3 words: quinine, quinine, quinine.
So what would have been the historical treatment of malaria? Just the quinine?
So I should point out that while we historically did not understand the full scope of malaria as a mosquito-borne disease, there are many who speculated its association with mosquitoes. It's said that Cleopatra slept under a mosquito net. So one could say they understood mosquitoes were bad. Maybe they didn't understand the transference of disease, but who's to say they didn't? Many medieval cures involved expelling the disease to another object. So, for example, if you strap a chicken to your arm for a day, it would transfer the disease to the chicken. Unfortunate for the chicken, to say the least. Another popular cure came from a 16th century Roman healer named Tralliano. He prescribed to take a ripe peach and remove the pip. Put the pip into an orange and tie it around the neck of the patient. He will be healed. But usher in, dun dun dun, cinchona.
Okay, so obviously that's something pretty significant. What on earth is cinchona, and what exactly is its importance in what we're talking about?
Cinchona is a plant native to South America. There are several legends that circulate about the findings of cinchona. So we're going to boil it down to this. In the early 17th century, Jesuit priests traveled to distant lands to obtain exotic medicines. Jesuit priests stumbled upon cinchona in South America, where supposedly the Indians of northern Peru were using it as a cure for shivering. Accredited to Bernabe de Cobo for its arrival in Europe, the treatment quickly flourishes. Found in many medicine bags carried by physicians, cinchona became a household name in the 18th and 19th century. It was typically taken in a powder mixed with water or wine, so often called the Jesuit's powder or Jesuit's bark. Then in 1820, French pharmacists isolated the alkaloids of cinchona to quinine.
And here I'm going to interject because this is one of my favorite little tidbits of history, that the lore behind the development of the gin and tonic, and it ties directly into quinine. So as quinine began to be understood as a preventative, it was very much in demand, but it was very bitter, of course, being made from bark. By the 19th century, the British soldiers in India were mixing their gin ration with water, sugar, and lime to make their daily dose of quinine taste better. Bottled tonic was then soon marketed, and it became a very popular cocktail. So modern tonic water has much less quinine by law, making it less effective as a malaria treatment, which means don't expect your evening cocktail to do much except taste good. But what are the modern treatments for malaria? Because obviously we're not drinking G&Ts all the time.
Boy, I wish. While modern treatments are vastly different from our forefathers, one thing still remains: quinine. Sometimes if you travel outside the United States, especially to places like Africa, Central America, the Caribbean, doctors will suggest that you take chloroquine, which I've taken before, is no fun. A person can develop immunity to malaria, but only through years of repeated infections, which again, no fun. Vaccines are in development for malaria, so other measures have been taken to prevent malaria, including insecticides, check out the whole DDT issue, draining swamps, and serving quinine-infused chocolate. No matter the case, malaria is a treatable and preventative disease, but it's not curable. We're constantly coming up with creative methods to prevent mosquito breeding grounds. Fun fact, if you go to Disney World, you will not encounter mosquitoes.
And why is that, Michaela?
So Disney World is located in Florida, a giant mosquito mosquito-ridden swamp. However, Disney found ways to creatively combat mosquitoes. All the architecture and water features are designed to prohibit standing water. They also plant mosquito-repellent plants like marigolds and herbs around the park, along with liquefied garlic sprays to ward off the pest.
Sounds ingenious and possibly something that people can replicate at home. But how does malaria directly affect what we talk about at the museum?
So, disease is one of the building blocks for American culture. It's a natural aspect of the human condition. At the Frontier Culture Museum, our mission is to increase public knowledge of the formation of a distinctive American culture from blending of European, African, and indigenous people. I simplify and draw most of the following information from the book 1493, Uncovering the New World Columbus, created by Charles C. Mann, and his chapter entitled Evil Air. In the 16th century, Queen Elizabeth I encouraged several landlords to drain their waters to create more farmland. In doing so, the draining left pockets of brackish water, aka the perfect storm for mosquitoes. Malaria struck England hard, which in turn followed the colonists to Jamestown. This was the first introduction of malaria to New World shores. So the American Indians lacked the immune system to fight the disease. During the 16th century, trade became a mainstay of the interaction between American Indians and Europeans. As Mann says, demand fed demand in a vicious cycle. The American Indians demanded flintlock weapons to defend their people against the encroaching European groups and other American Indians. The Europeans demanded slaves to work their fields of rice, tobacco, and sugar. A 1708 census tallied 4,000 English colonists, 1,500 Indian slaves, and 160 servants in all of the Carolinas. The Carolinas were an export area for American Indians to be shipped to Virginia, the Caribbean, New York, and Massachusetts. Regardless, the American Indian slave trade quickly drops off in the 18th century. While little direct evidence is shown, this drop can be attributed to the fact that the American Indian could not withstand the malaria-infested plantations. So the colonists looked to another solution to their problems: Africans. According to Mann, biologically speaking, they, Africans, were fitter, which is another way of saying that in these places they were, loaded words, genetically superior. Mann explains that 97% of people in West Africa and Central Africa are Duffy negative, or immune to Vivax malaria. While the Europeans, Indians, and Africans alike suffered from malaria, Africans as a whole has had less malarial disease than other groups. To quote Mann again, malaria did not cause slavery, it strengthened the economic case for it. So, again, while malaria was not the main cause for many disasters and events in history, it is a domino that topples another domino.
So malaria really is a true example of pretty much everything that we talk about at the museum: politics, social issues, medical issues, just daily life in general.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you for joining us today, Michaela. One last thing before you go. Here's a special announcement about an upcoming December 2020 event.
Feel like you need a little holiday cheer, but you want to stay socially distanced? Look no further. Please join us at the Frontier Culture Museum's Old World Holiday Tours. You may recognize this as a COVID-friendly version for our traditional lantern tours. This year, all holiday-themed scenes will take place outdoors. Each theatrical scene features historic holiday traditions, including wassailing, street performers, music, and a surprise visit from two special figures of the Christmas season. Tours will be limited to 15 people to facilitate social distancing, with multiple tours going out every half hour between 4 o'clock to 7:30. Tours run from December 4th through 6th, 11th through the 13th, and 18th through the 20th. For the safety of everyone, visitors will be required to wear masks and maintain appropriate social distancing during the tour. Please visit our website or Facebook page for more information. To purchase tickets, you can call or visit our website. We look forward to seeing you all.
And we hope you enjoyed Banjo Strings and Drinking Gourds. We bring you historical episodes twice a month. You can check out the Frontier Culture Museum online at frontiermuseum.org, on Facebook and Instagram. You'll find background on all the farms of the museum, information on upcoming events, and so much more. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, please consider visiting the website and clicking the donate button. Donations to the American Frontier Culture Foundation support programs like field trips, summer camps, and special events. We'd greatly appreciate it. See you next time.